Welcome to the DoubleACS Daily News for January 19th, 2016. Yesterday and over the weekend, many in the Attleboro community took time to remember the life and contributions of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Although there were many stories and presentations shared, one theme that stayed consistent in each was Dr. King's vision of a beloved community. On Saturday, the mentorship organization On Common Ground held a ceremony at the Salette Shrine with presentations from members of the Attleboro Public Library and the Literacy Center. Shrine Director Father Ted Brown touched on that theme.
I think both my dad and myself realized that night that a voice which called the American people and the human family to their best was gone. A few years later, while I was in college, I learned that the best vision of the human family that Dr. King had described so often was called the beloved community. At its basics, the beloved community was not perfect, but a place where people cared for one another despite their differences and watched out for one another. The beloved community sees the dignity of each and every single person. It was a God-given dignity because we are made in God's image. At that point, every person works to see that everyone is given what he or she needs to live in the fullness of that dignity. The community itself sees it as an outrage when people are not given what they need to live as full human beings. In this beloved community, all forms of racism, discrimination, homelessness, hunger, and poverty cannot be tolerated.
On Monday afternoon, the city held its 29th municipal celebration of Dr. King. Ethel Garvin of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Committee of Greater Attleboro and Attleboro City Councilor Frank Cook also reflected that idea.
It's important that we remember the message, Dr. King's message of equality, social justice, and nonviolence. As Dr. King worked to eliminate racial justice, he hoped that one day the nonviolent values he was uplifting and the growing spirit of brother and sisterhood among the diverse participants of the civil rights movement would form into a beloved community, a society based on justice, equal opportunity, and love of one's fellow human beings. In this beloved community, people and their differences are reconciled. With tensions rising in communities across America, and as its citizens deal with old and new social justice issues, including poverty, racism, violent crimes, and terrorism, now is a good time for members of the Greater Attleboro community to reflect on Dr. King's vision of the beloved community.
Well, there has been progress. We know that in recent months, there have been too many events that painfully remind us of the challenge and then of the task that lies ahead. And yet at times it does appear that we've turned back the clock, turned back the hands of the clock, and we're going back in time. This week in the paper, Ethel was quoted, I think, two, maybe three times. And she challenged us as she was talking about this day to reflect on King's vision of the beloved community. And she noted that such a community, quote, responds to one another out of agape love. As we know, Dr. King was a Baptist minister. He was very well acquainted with this concept of agape love. And in the New Testament, in the book of Matthew and the book of John, Christ actually instructs us to love God and love our neighbor. They're simple words, and yet when you stop to think about them and pause and consider them, they're very profound words. And I was thinking, imagine how different the world would be if we were able to embrace that concept of agape love, and of loving God and loving your neighbor, and putting your neighbor first. And I was thinking that in that way, if we were able to do that, then that dream that Dr. King painted for us on that day in August of 1963 could indeed become a reality.
The municipal ceremony was followed by an interfaith celebration at the Agudas Achim synagogue. The ceremony had a theme of the arts and was reflected in presentations by State Senator Richard Ross, vocalist Alexia Motley, comedian Corey Manning, dancer Patrice Ambrose, and storyteller Valerie Tutson. That's it for today's update. For DoubleACS News, I'm Austin Ricketts.